Emily Harper jolted awake in her Stanford University dorm room, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. The air was thick with the familiar scents of her sophomore year, stale coffee lavender perfume, and the musty tang of old textbooks stacked on her desk. She blinked disoriented as moonlight filtered through the blinds of her Palo Alto residence hall, casting silver stripes across the cluttered floor. Her hands trembled as she touched her face, feeling the smooth skin of her 19-year-old self. It was real. She was back. Moments ago, in a dream that felt more like a divine judgment, Emily had stood in a void of blinding light. Soft yet commanding voice had whispered, "Your suffering was unjust. Rewrite your fate." The words lingered heavy with promise as her past life's horrors flashed before her: Jake Turner's cruel hands, her parents' graves, her own blood pooling on a cold floor. She had died at 25, betrayed and broken her congenital heart condition, exploited by the man she once loved. Now, impossibly, she was reborn, returned to the autumn of 2025, her sophomore year at Stanford, with a chance to undo it all. Emily sat on her narrow dorm bed, the springs creaking under her weight. Her roommate's empty bunk loomed across the room, posters of pop stars plastered on the wall above it. Her gaze fell on her desk, where a framed photo of her parents, Laura and David Harper, smiled back at her. Tears pricked her eyes. In her past life, they had died in a car accident, rushing to her side after Jake's betrayal sent her to the hospital. This time, she vowed they would live. She would protect them, their tech company, Harper Innovations, and herself from the leech who had drained them dry. The dorm door swung open, and Jessica Miller strutted in her blonde ponytail, bouncing with smug confidence. Her blue eyes glinted with pride and malice as she leaned against the doorframe, clutching her phone. Emily purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I've got news. I'm pregnant. It's Jake Turner's baby, your boyfriend." The words hit like a slap, echoing the exact moment from Emily's past life when her world had begun to unravel. Back then, she had screamed, slapped Jessica, and collapsed from a heart flare-up, her love for Jake blinding her to his deceit. Now Emily's pulse quickened, but not from shock. A cold clarity settled over her, sharper than the California night air seeping through the window. She remembered everything: Jake's lies, his abuse, his theft of her family's legacy. Jessica, a scholarship student desperate to escape her impoverished roots, had been his willing accomplice, seduced by his false persona as a wealthy heir. Emily's lips curved into a calm smile, masking the fire in her chest. "Congratulations, Jessica," she said, her voice steady. "That's big news." "Are you keeping the baby?" Jessica faltered, her smug grin wavering. She had expected tears, rage, or a meltdown, anything but this composed response. We're thrilled," she stammered, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Jake's taking me to celebrate tonight. You're not mad?" Her tone held a hint of suspicion, as if she sensed a trap but couldn't place it. "Not at all," Emily replied, leaning back on her bed, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders. "You two sound perfect together. I wish you the best." Her words were a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through Jessica's bravado. Jake's face flashed in her mind, his sharp jawline, his charming smile that hid a monster. In her past life, she had funded his lifestyle, believing his promises of love. Her family had supported him, honoring a debt to his father, a bankrupt veteran who served with David Harper. That kindness had cost them everything. Jessica lingered, clearly thrown by Emily's calm. "Well, okay then. I'm heading out. Jake's waiting." She grabbed her purse and flounced out, leaving a trail of cheap perfume. The door clicked shut, and Emily exhaled, her hands clenching the bedspread. Alone, she let the weight of her rebirth settle. The voice in her dream had given her a second chance, but it came with a price. She had to face Jake again, relive the pain, and outsmart him. Her heart, fragile but beating, urged her to act. She reached for her phone, her fingers steady despite the memories flooding back, Jake's hands around her throat, his voice snarling, "You don't deserve me." She dialed her dad, David, the CEO of Harper Innovations, whose warm voice always grounded her. "Emily, sweetheart, what's up?" he answered, concern lacing his tone. She swallowed a sob, overwhelmed by hearing him alive. "Dad," she said, forcing her voice to stay even, "we need to stop funding Jake Turner. He's not our responsibility anymore. He's a junior now, old enough to manage." David paused, then chuckled. "Your mom's been saying that for years. Laura never trusted that boy. I kept the checks coming because you insisted he was the one." Emily winced, recalling her past life's naivety. She had fallen for Jake's charm, convincing her parents to treat him like family. "I was wrong, Dad," she said softly. He's using us. Please, cut him off credit card everything. Today, done, David said firmly. I'll call the bank now. You sure you're okay, Em? You sound different. Emily forced a smile into her voice. I'm fine, Dad. Just waking up to some things. Love you. She hung up her chest tight with relief and resolve. Jake was about to learn that the Harpers' generosity had limits. Tonight he'd take Jessica to some overpriced San Francisco restaurant, flashing a card that no longer worked. Emily pictured his face, panic twisting his perfect features, and felt a spark of satisfaction. This was only the beginning. She stood crossing to the window. The Stanford campus sprawled below its red-tiled roofs, glowing under the moon. In her past life, she had been a fool, blinded by love, her heart condition worsening with every betrayal. Now armed with the knowledge of what Jake would become, she was a different Emily Harper. The voice in her dream had promised a chance to rewrite her fate, and she would seize it. Jake Turner would pay for his sins, and she would emerge unbroken, her family intact, her future hers to claim. Emily Harper sat on her dorm bed at Stanford University, the echo of Jessica Miller's smug announcement. I'm pregnant with Jake Turner's baby still ringing in her ears. The moonlight filtering through the Palo Alto dorm window cast shadows that seemed to writhe, pulling her mind back to her past life. At 19, she was whole again, her heart beating steadily despite its congenital fragility. But the memories of her previous life ending at 25 in a haze of pain and betrayal clawed at her. She closed her eyes, letting the horrors unfold, each one fueling her resolve to destroy Jake Turner. Emily had been a naive romantic in her past life, dazzled by Jake's sharp features and easy charm. He was a junior when she was a freshman, a scholarship student whose father, a bankrupt veteran, had served with her dad, David Harper, in the military. The Harpers, founders of Harper Innovations, a thriving Silicon Valley tech firm, had funded Jake's education out of loyalty. Emily, an only child, saw him as her future, dreaming of a life together. But Jake's love was a facade, a calculated play for her family's wealth. The first betrayal came when Emily was 21, a junior herself. Jake, knowing her congenital heart condition made pregnancy risky, pressured her into intimacy. She became pregnant, her joy tempered by fear for her health. At 3 months, she woke to searing pain in her abdomen, blood soaking her sheets. Jake had slipped abortion pills into her dinner, his face pale but unapologetic as she screamed. It's for the best, Emily, he'd said, his voice cold. Her parents, Laura and David, rushed her to Stanford Medical Center, but a drunk driver collided with their car on the 101 freeway. The crash killed them instantly, leaving Emily orphaned and broken. Jake seized control of Harper Innovations, leveraging his role as the grieving son-in-law. In public, he wore black tears streaming as he spoke at their funeral, his performance flawless. They were my family, he sobbed to the press, fooling everyone. But his mask fell behind the locked doors of their Palo Alto mansion. He beat Emily, his fists bruising her arms, his belt leaving welts on her back. You're nothing without me, he snarled, shoving her head into a toilet, the porcelain cold against her cheek. Her heart condition worsened, each attack leaving her gasping, but Jake didn't care. He forged psychiatric evaluations claiming Emily was delusional and suicidal. When she tried to escape to the Palo Alto police, he intercepted her, crocodile tears in his eyes. She's unstable, he told the officers, clinging to her like a devoted partner. They believed him, dismissing her pleas. Back home, he dragged her by the hair across the hardwood floor, his voice a venomous hiss. Try that again, and you're done. Her spirit frayed, but her love for him, twisted by hope, kept her tethered. The second pregnancy was worse. At 24, 5 months along, Jake forced scalding water and crushed pills down her throat, burning her vocal cords. She gave birth prematurely on the mansion's floor, blood pooling as she clawed for air. Jake stood over her, his face twisted with rage. If it weren't for you, Jessica wouldn't have died, he spat. You don't deserve a Turner child. Jessica, his mistress in that life, had died from a botched abortion at a shady clinic, a tragedy Jake blamed on Emily's family for interfering. The Harpers' sin, he claimed, was their wealth, their support of his education, a debt he twisted into justification for his cruelty. Emily's vision faded that night, her heart tearing apart with each faltering beat. She tried to scream, but her ruined voice produced only a rasp. Jake's face, contorted with hate, was the last thing she saw. Your family's paying for its sins, he whispered as she slipped away. Her final thought was a desperate wish for a second chance, a plea to save her parents, to undo the pain. The mysterious voice in her rebirth dream had answered, though she didn't know why or how. Back in her dorm, Emily opened her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. The weight of her past life pressed against her chest, but it didn't break her. She wiped her face, her fingers trembling but resolute. She wasn't that naive girl anymore, blinded by love. The memories of Jake's abuse, her parents' deaths, and her own murder were a fire in her veins, burning away fear. She saw Jake clearly now, a parasite who had wormed into her family's generosity, a predator who thrived on her weakness. Emily stood pacing the small dorm room. Her parents were alive. Harper Innovations was intact, and she had a chance to rewrite her story. But the cost was facing Jake again, his charm a trap she now knew to avoid. She thought of Jessica, pregnant and oblivious, a pawn in Jake's game. In her past life, Emily's jealousy had driven her to confront Jessica, landing her in the hospital. This time she would be brighter, colder. She would dismantle Jake's lies, protect her family, and ensure he paid for every bruise, every tear. The dorm was quiet, the hum of the radiator, the only sound. Emily glanced at her phone, the call to her dad still fresh. Cutting off Jake's credit card was just the start. He was out there now, probably charming Jessica with promises of a lavish life, unaware that his world was about to collapse. Emily's lips curled into a faint smile, not of joy, but of purpose. The voice in her dream had given her this power, this second life. She wouldn't waste it. Jake Turner would learn what it meant to cross a Harper, and she would emerge whole, her heart beating strong. Emily Harper stood in her Stanford University dorm room, the faint hum of the Palo Alto night seeping through the cracked window. The air was thick with the mingled scents of jasmine body spray, instant noodles, and the musty pages of textbooks strewn across her desk. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, beat steadily now, but her mind churned with memories of her past life, Jake Turner's cruel hands, her parents' graves, her own bloodied end. Jessica Miller's voice still echoed from moments ago. "I'm pregnant with Jake Turner's baby." In her previous life, those words had shattered Emily, sending her into a jealous rage that landed her in the hospital. Now reborn through a mysterious dream's promise at 19, she was different. The spark of vengeance ignited within her, sharp and unyielding. Jessica leaned against the dorm's doorframe, her blue eyes glinting with smug anticipation. She twirled a strand of blonde hair, waiting for Emily to crumble. In her past life, Emily had slapped Jessica, her heart condition flaring from the emotional shock. Her mother, Laura, had rushed to her bedside, scolding Jake, who played the remorseful boyfriend. That confrontation had spiraled into tragedy, Jessica's botched abortion, her death, and the Harpers' downfall. Emily's fingers twitched, the urge to lash out, flickering, then fading. She wasn't that girl anymore. Her rebirth had given her clarity, a chance to rewrite her fate, and she wouldn't squander it on impulse. "Congratulations, Jessica," Emily said, her voice smooth as glass. She sat on her bed, crossing her legs casually, her dark hair falling over one shoulder. "That's huge. Are you and Jake planning to keep the baby?" Her smile was deliberate, a mask hiding the storm inside. Jessica's smirk faltered, her brows knitting in confusion. She'd expected tear screams, anything but this poised indifference. "Yeah, we're thrilled," Jessica replied, her tone less specific. "Jake's taking me to a fancy dinner tonight to celebrate. You're okay with this?" Emily tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "Why wouldn't I be? You two seem perfect for each other. I'm happy for you." The lie tasted bitter, but it served her purpose. Jessica's confidence wavered, her eyes searching Emily's face for a crack in her composure. Emily felt pity for Jessica, a scholarship student from a broken home in Fresno, desperate to climb the social ladder. In her past life, Emily hadn't seen Jessica's hunger for status, her blind trust in Jake's lies. Now she understood Jessica was a pawn, just as Emily had been. As Jessica grabbed her purse and flounced out, muttering about her date, Emily's calm facade cracked. Alone, she pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart's unsteady rhythm. The memories of Jake's abuse, his belt on her skin, his voice snarling, "You're nothing," surged like a tide. She sank to the floor, her breath hitching. "Not again," she whispered, grounding herself. The dream voice that had granted her rebirth echoed in her mind. "Rewrite your fate." It was a command, a lifeline. She wiped her eyes, resolve hardening. Jake would pay, but not with her tears. She would dismantle his world with precision. Emily rose, grabbing her phone from the cluttered desk. She'd already called her dad David to cut off Jake's funding, but now she needed her mom Laura, the sharp-witted lawyer who'd always doubted Jake. The phone rang twice before Laura's warm voice answered. "Emily, honey, everything okay?" Emily's throat tightened, hearing her mother alive after reliving her death. "Mom." "I'm fine," she said, forcing steadiness. "I told Dad to stop supporting Jake. He's not worth it. Can you make sure it's done credit card everything?" Laura's tone sharpened with approval. "I never liked that boy. Too slick, too eager. Your dad only kept him on because you were smitten." Emily winced, the memory of her past self's blind love stinging. "I was wrong, Mom. He's a user. Let's end it now." Laura agreed, promising to handle the bank. "You sound different, Em," she added, concern creeping in. "You sure you're okay?" Emily forced a laugh. "Just growing up. Love you." Hanging up, she pictured Jake's face when his card failed at that San Francisco restaurant tonight. The thought sparked a cold satisfaction. She paced the dorm, her sneakers scuffing the worn carpet. Jessica's words replayed Jake's baby, their celebration. In her past life, Emily's outburst had pushed Jessica to a shady clinic where she bled out, leaving Jake to blame Emily's family. This time, Emily would play it smarter. She'd let Jessica's delusions about Jake's wealth fester, knowing he was broke without the Harpers' support. Jessica's ambition, fueled by her hardscrabble upbringing, would drive her to demand more, exposing Jake's lies. Emily stopped at the window, Stanford's campus, sprawling below its red-tiled roofs, glowing under the California moon. Her reflection stared back, her brown eyes fierce with purpose. She'd been a fool in her past life, funding Jake's charade as a tech heir, believing his promises. Now she saw him for what he was, a predator who'd stolen her family's legacy. The dream voice had given her the second chance, and she felt its weight, a mandate to protect her parents, save Harper Innovations, and bury Jake's ambitions. Her heart thudded, not with fear, but with a fire she hadn't known she possessed. Tonight, Jake would begin to fall, and Emily Harper would be the one to push him. Emily Harper sat at her desk in her Stanford University dorm, the glow of her laptop screen casting a soft light across the cluttered room. The Palo Alto night was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic on El Camino Real. Her fingers hovered over her phone, the call to her father, David Harper, still fresh in her mind. She had just instructed him to cut off all financial support for Jake Turner, the man who in her past life had destroyed her family. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, thudded with a mix of resolve and unease. The mysterious voice from her rebirth dream, "Rewrite your fate," echoed, urging her forward. Tonight, Jake's world would begin to crumble. Earlier, Jessica Miller had stormed out of the dorm, smugly announcing her pregnancy with Jake's baby, expecting to unravel Emily. Instead, Emily's calm congratulations had thrown her off balance. Now alone, Emily felt the weight of her past life's memories, Jake's fists, her parents' car crash, her own death on a blood-soaked floor. She clenched her fist nails, digging into her palms. The pain grounded her, a reminder that she was alive, reborn at 19 with a chance to make things right. But the fear lingered. Could she outsmart Jake without losing herself again? Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. Her mother, Laura Harper, the sharp-edged lawyer, had always seen through Jake's charm. "Em, it's done," Laura said, her voice firm. "The bank canceled Jake's credit card. Your dad sent him a text this afternoon, clear as day, no more funding. He's on his own." Emily exhaled, a knot loosening in her chest. "Thanks, Mom. You were right about him." Laura's tone softened. "I never trusted that boy. Too polished, like a used car salesman." "You okay, honey? You sound heavy." Emily forced a smile into her voice, though her throat tightened. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired of carrying dead weight." She hung up, picturing her parents alive and their Palo Alto home safe for now. She had begged them to fund Jake in her past life, believing his lies about love and ambition. He was a scholarship student, son of a bankrupt veteran who'd served with David in the Gulf War. The Harpers had paid for his tuition clothes, even his car, treating him like family. That kindness had been their downfall. Not this time. Across the Bay Area, Jake was likely at a Michelin star restaurant in San Francisco, flashing the now useless card to impress Jessica. Emily imagined his face, sharp jawline, tightening green eyes, widening in panic as the server returned with a declined transaction. The thought sparked a cold thrill, but it was fleeting. Her hand pressed to her chest, feeling her heart's uneven rhythm. She hadn't just lost her family in her past life. She'd lost herself, her dignity eroded by Jake's abuse. "Never again," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the dorm's radiator hum. Her laptop pinged with an email from a classmate, a group project reminder. It steadied her a tether to her new reality. She was a computer science major destined to join Harper Innovations, her family's tech empire. Despite his lies about being an heir, Jake had no claim to it. She opened a photo on her phone, one of her and Jake from their first year, his arm around her, his smile a mask. She deleted it, her finger trembling not from love, but from rage. The dream voice had given her this second chance, and she would wield it like a blade. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Jake's night unraveled. The server, a stern woman in black, handed back his card. Declined, she said, her voice cutting through the clink of wine glasses. In a tight red dress, Jessica frowned, her manicured nails tapping the table. Try it again, Jake snapped, his charm fraying. The second attempt failed. He called Laura, his voice tight with desperation. Mrs. Harper, what's going on? My card's not working. Laura's response was ice cold. Jake, you're a junior. The Harpers aren't your ATM anymore. Figure it out. Jake hung up, his face flushed as Jessica's stare bored into him. He tried Emily next, and his call went to voicemail. Emily, what the hell is your family pulling? He hissed, oblivious to the diners glancing his way. You think you can humiliate me because you've got money? The server hovered, her patience thinning. Jake's mind raced. He'd promised Jessica a life of luxury banking on the Harpers' wealth. Now he was exposed a fraud in a borrowed suit. Back in her dorm, Emily's phone buzzed with Jake's voicemail. She deleted it without listening, her lips curling into a faint smile. She stood crossing to the window, Stanford's campus, sprawling below its palm trees, swaying in the night breeze. The memory of Jake's past life taunts, "You're nothing without me," stung, but they no longer held power. She wasn't the naive girl who'd funded his lies. She was Emily Harper, daughter of innovators reborn to reclaim her life. Her gaze hardened, fixed on the distant city lights. Jake's humiliation at the restaurant was just the first cut. Jessica, blinded by her own ambition, would push him further, demanding the lifestyle he couldn't afford. Emily would let them unravel, her every move calculated to expose his deceit. The dream voice's promise burned in her chest. Rewrite your fate. She would, starting with the puppet strings she'd just severed. Jake Turner was no longer her burden. Soon he'd be no one's. Emily Harper leaned against her Stanford University dorm window, the cool glass grounding her as the Palo Alto night buzzed with distant car horns. Her phone lay silent on her desk, Jake Turner's furious voicemail deleted without a listen. Hours earlier, she had instructed her parents to cut off his credit card, a lifeline funded by Harper Innovations, her family's Silicon Valley tech empire. The dream voice that had granted her rebirth. Rewrite your fate echoed in her mind, a steady pulse against the memories of her past life. Jake's fists, her parents' funeral, her own death at his hands. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, thudded unevenly, but she welcomed the ache. It reminded her she was alive, reborn at 19 to undo her mistakes. Jake's call had come from a San Francisco Michelin star restaurant where his card's rejection had left him scrambling. Emily pictured his sharp features twisting in panic, his green eyes darting as Jessica Miller, pregnant and smug, watched his charade unravel. The thought sparked a flicker of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. Alone in the dorm, Emily sank onto her bed, the springs creaking under her. Her hands trembled as she clutched her knees, memories of Jake's past life abuse flooding back, his belt cracking against her skin, his voice snarling, "You're nothing." She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. "I'm not that girl anymore," she whispered, her voice fierce despite the tears in her eyes. This time she would break him, not herself. Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. It was Jake again, his name flashing like a warning. She answered, her voice cool as steel. "What do you want, Jake?" His response was a torrent of rage. "Emily Harper, what the hell is your family pulling? Your mom canceled my card out of nowhere, like I'm some kid you can jerk around. You think you can humiliate me because you've got money?" His words echoed his past life taunts when he'd called her a spoiled heiress, mocking her wealth to mask his inadequacy. Back then, she'd cowered, desperate to please him. Now her lips curled into a faint smile. "Jake," she said evenly, "we supported you out of kindness for your dad's service with mine. You're a junior now, not a charity case. Time to stand on your own." Her words were a blade cutting through his entitlement. Jake sputtered, his voice rising. "You're doing this to control me. You Harpers think you're above everyone." Emily laughed, a cold, sharp sound that silenced him. "Control you, Jake? You overestimate yourself. My family's done with you. Try a part-time job." Or are you too proud for that? She hung up, blocking his number, her heart racing but steady. The dorm's radiator hummed, filling the quiet. Emily stood pacing the worn carpet, her sneakers scuffing softly. She thought of Jessica, whose ambition to escape her Fresno roots had blinded her to Jake's lies. In her past life, Emily's jealousy had pushed Jessica to a deadly abortion, a tragedy Jake used to justify his cruelty. Now Emily saw Jessica's role clearly a pawn in Jake's game, just as she had been. She felt pity, but it didn't soften her resolve. Jessica's delusions fueled Jake's downfall, and Emily would fan the flames. She opened her laptop, the screen glowing with a Stanford group project spreadsheet. It was a reminder of her future computer science Harper Innovations, a life free from Jake's shadow. In her past life, she'd let love blind her funding, Jake's lavish lifestyle, believing his promises of a shared future. He'd repaid her with betrayal, seizing her family's company after her parents' death. Now she was awake, her rebirth a gift she wouldn't squander. She deleted another old photo of them, her fingers steady, her heart heavy with the weight of what she'd lost and what she'd gained. Across town, Jake sat in the restaurant, his face flushed as the server hovered, her patience gone. Jessica's eyes narrowed, her red dress stark against the white tablecloth. "What's going on, Jake?" she demanded, her voice sharp. He forced a smile, muttering about a bank error, but the diner's stares burned. He'd promised her a condo, a life of luxury, all built on Harper money. With the card dead, he scrambled, borrowing cash from a classmate over the phone, barely covering the bill. Jessica's silence was louder than any accusation, her trust in his heir persona fraying. Back in her dorm, Emily gazed at Stanford's campus, the red-tiled roofs silver under the moon. Her parents were alive, and Harper Innovations is secure for now. But Jake's desperation would grow, and she'd be ready. She thought of her mother, Laura, whose lawyer instincts had always distrusted Jake. "You sound different," Laura had said, sensing her shift. Emily was different, forged by pain and reborn with purpose. The dream voice's promise pulsed in her veins. She would dismantle Jake's lies, protect her family, and reclaim her life. His humiliation tonight was just the start, a crack in his facade she'd widen until it shattered. Emily Harper sat cross-legged on her Stanford University dorm bed, the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through the Palo Alto night. The room smelled of vanilla candles and old textbooks, starkly contrasting the chaos in her mind. Her phone, now silent after blocking Jake Turner's number, lay on her desk, beside a photo of her parents, Laura and David Harper. Her heart, weakened by its congenital condition, beat steadily, but memories of her past life, Jake's brutal hands, her parents' fatal crash, her own death clung like shadows. The mysterious dream voice that had granted her rebirth at 19 echoed, "Rewrite your fate." She was doing just that, and Jake's humiliation at the San Francisco restaurant last night was only the beginning. Jessica Miller had returned to the dorm that morning, her blonde ponytail swinging as she gushed about Jake's supposed wealth. "He's got a condo in Palo Alto," she bragged to their roommates, her voice loud enough for Emily to hear from her desk. "We're moving there soon. It's way better than this cramped dorm." Emily's lips twitched, suppressing a smile. The condo was hers, a Harper family property, not Jake's. Jessica, a scholarship student from a struggling Fresno family, saw Jake as her escape from a life of scraping by. Her mother cleaned houses, her father was long gone, and Jessica's ambition burned brighter than her common sense. Emily understood her hunger. Hadn't she once been blinded by Jake's charm? In her past life, Emily's jealousy had driven a wedge between her and Jessica, pushing the latter to a deadly abortion at a shady clinic. Jake had used that tragedy to justify his abuse, blaming Emily's family for interfering. Now reborn, Emily saw Jessica's role clearly a pawn in Jake's game, her delusions a weapon Emily could wield. She leaned back, her dark hair spilling over her pillow, and let Jessica's words wash over her. "Jake's taking me shopping tomorrow," Jessica continued, her eyes gleaming. "He says I deserve the best." Their roommates, Sarah and Mia, nodded politely, but Emily caught their skeptical glances. "Sounds impressive," Jessica said, her voice warm but calculated. She stood stretching casually, her Stanford hoodie loose over her jeans. "A guy like Jake must have big plans for you. That condo's in Chamalaya Grove, right prime real estate." Jessica beamed, oblivious to the trap. "Exactly. He's practically an heir to Harper Innovations." Emily's heart twinged, not from pain, but from the audacity of Jake's lie. Harper Innovations was her family's tech empire, and Jake was no heir, just a leech her parents had funded out of loyalty to his veteran father. Emily's mind flashed to her past life when she'd begged her parents to bankroll Jake, believing his promises of love. His betrayal cost her everything, her family voice and life. Now, alone in the dorm's quiet, she felt the weight of that loss. Her hand pressed to her chest, her heart's uneven rhythm, a reminder of her fragility. She closed her eyes, picturing her parents alive, safe in their Palo Alto home. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she wiped it away, resolve hardening. "I won't lose them again," she murmured, her voice a vow. She opened her eyes and refocused on Jessica, who showed Sarah a photo of a designer bag on her phone. Emily saw her chance. "That's a cute bag," she said, leaning over. "But Jake's probably getting you something bigger. With his connections, he could score you a whole wardrobe." Jessica's smile widened, her ambitions stoked. "Oh, totally. He promised me a Gucci purse tomorrow." Emily nodded, her expression encouraging. "You deserve it. A guy like that shouldn't skimp." Inside, she smirked. Jake was broke, and his Harper-funded card was dead. He'd scramble to keep up the act. Jessica's phone pinged, and she giggled, texting Jake. Emily watched, her mind racing. In her past life, she'd been too emotional confronting Jessica and landing in the hospital with a heart flare-up. Now, she played a longer game, letting Jessica's greed push Jake to the edge. She thought of her mother, Laura, whose lawyer instincts had labeled Jake a fraud. "You sound different," Laura had said last night, sensing her shift. Emily was different, reborn, not with blind love, but with a fire to protect her family and bury Jake's lies. Outside Stanford's campus lay still, its red-tiled roofs gleaming under the moon. Emily crossed to the window, her reflection sharp in the glass. She wasn't the naive girl who'd funded Jake's charade, believing he'd join Harper Innovations. She was Emily Harper, daughter of innovators, armed with the dream voice's gift. Jessica's delusions would make Jake desperate, and Emily would watch his facade crack. She turned back to her desk, opening her laptop to a coding project, a reminder of her future beyond Jake's shadow. Tonight, he was likely begging for cash to save face with Jessica, each failure tightening the noose Emily had set. The spark of vengeance burned brighter, and she was ready to fan it into a flame. Emily Harper stood in her Stanford University dorm, the evening air thick with the scent of eucalyptus drifting through the open window. Palo Alto's campus buzzed faintly outside, contrasting with the storm brewing in her mind. Her phone resting on her desk beside a crumpled coffee cup held no new messages from Jake Turner. Her block on his number ensured that. Last night, she had severed his financial lifeline, the Harper-funded credit card, leaving him humiliated at a San Francisco restaurant. The mysterious dream voice that had reborn her at 19, "Rewrite your fate," pulsed in her veins, urging her to take back what was hers. Today was the Porsche, a Harper family gift Jake had pawned to cover his lies. Fragile from its congenital condition, Emily's heart beat unevenly as she gathered documents from her desk, car invoice, ownership papers, registration. In her past life, Jake had used her assets to fuel his charade as a tech heir, charming Jessica Miller with promises of wealth. Her parents, Laura and David Harper, had died in a crash, rushing to her side after his betrayal. Now, reborn Emily felt the weight of that loss. She paused, her fingers brushing a photo of her parents, their smiles warm. A tear fell, but she wiped it away, her resolve stealing. She vowed that "I won't let him take anything else," her voice soft but fierce. The memory of Jake's past life abuse, his belt on her skin, his voice snarling, "You don't deserve me," clawed at her. She shook it off, focusing on the present. Yesterday, she'd learned Jake had pawned her Porsche to settle his restaurant bill, a desperate move to maintain his facade for Jessica, the pregnant scholarship student from Fresno. Emily had filed a police report, her hands steady as she handed over Jake's contact info. The car, a sleek black 911, was a gift from her dad, David, for her 18th birthday. Jake had no right to it yet. He'd driven it around Stanford, fooling everyone. Her phone rang, jarring her thoughts. It was the Palo Alto police. "Ms. Harper, we've located your vehicle," the officer said. "It's at the restaurant. The owner is holding it as collateral. Can you come now?" Emily nodded, grabbing her jacket. "I'm on my way." She caught a cab to San Francisco, the city's lights blurring past. At the restaurant, a chic spot with glass walls and soft jazz, 2 officers waited by her Porsche, its black paint gleaming under streetlights. The manager, a stern man in a suit, crossed his arms. "Your friend didn't pay." He offered the car. Emily handed over her documents, her voice calm. Jake Turner borrowed it without permission. His dad and mine were army buddies, so I lent it to him, but he blocked me when I asked for it back. The officer nodded, scanning the papers. This checks out. We've called Mr. Turner. He's on his way. Emily's heart twinged, not from fear but anticipation. She pictured Jake's face, his charm crumbling under scrutiny. In her past life, she'd been too weak to fight back her pleas, ignored by police he'd manipulated. Now she stood tall, her brown eyes sharp. Jake arrived after 900 p.m., his jaw tight, his green eyes flashing defiantly. "Emily, what the hell?" he barked, ignoring the officers. "I just used your car for a bit and you called the cops." His voice drew stares from nearby diners. Emily's smile was cold. "You pawned my property, Jake." "That's theft," the senior officer, a woman with a no-nonsense glare, cut in. "Mr. Turner, you're in no position to yell. Explain yourself." Jake's bravado faltered. "I'm a student. I don't have money right now. My card got canceled." Emily crossed her arms. "Then pay the bill and return my car, or I'm pressing charges." Jake's face reddened, his hands clenching. "You're doing this to humiliate me," he snapped. The officer raised a hand. "Enough. Pay the restaurant, or we treat this as theft." Jake scrambled, calling classmates for cash, his voice low and desperate. He scraped most of the bill, writing an IOU for the rest. The manager, satisfied, released the Porsche. Emily took the keys, her fingers steady, her heart racing triumphantly. Driving back to Palo Alto, she felt the car's power under her hands, symbolizing her reclaimed control. She stopped at Chamalea Grove, her family's condo complex, and changed the access code, ensuring Jake and Jessica couldn't enter. The security guard, a friend of her dad's, nodded. "No one gets in without your say, Ms. Harper." Emily smiled, a weightlifter. She thought of her parents alive and safe and her future at Harper Innovations. In her past life, Jake had stolen everything, her assets, her dignity, her life. Now she was taking it back. Back at the dorm, her roommates Sarah and Mia greeted her with milk tea. "Out with your boyfriend," Sarah teased. Emily laughed, shaking her head and just handling business. She didn't mention the Porsche, but word was spreading. A classmate texted, "Heard Jake got busted at some fancy restaurant. What's up with him?" Emily didn't reply, but her lips curled. Stanford's gossip mill was churning Jake's rich heir image, fraying. Jessica's delusions would push him further, and Emily would watch his world collapse, her dream voice's promise guiding her every step. Emily Harper leaned against her dorm desk at Stanford University, the faint glow of her laptop illuminating the cluttered room. The Palo Alto night hummed outside, damp grass, mingling with the dorm's lingering pizza and laundry detergent aroma. Her Porsche keys, reclaimed from Jake Turner after his desperate pawn attempt, rested beside a photo of her parents, Laura and David Harper. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, beat steadily, but memories of her past life, Jake's brutal abuse, her parents' fatal crash, her own death lingered like ghosts. The dream voice that had reborn her at 19, "Rewrite your fate," fueled her resolve. Jake's humiliation at the San Francisco restaurant spread, and Emily was ready to fan the flames. Yesterday, she faced Jake at the restaurant, which was backed by police as he scrambled to pay a bill he couldn't afford. His rich heir persona, built on Harper Innovations' money, had cracked under the weight of a declined credit card. Jessica Miller, his pregnant girlfriend, had watched her trust in him fraying. Emily knew Jessica's ambition, born from a hardscrabble Fresno upbringing with a single mother cleaning houses, drove her to cling to Jake's lies. In her past life, Emily's jealousy had pushed Jessica to a fatal abortion, a tragedy Jake twisted to justify his cruelty. Emily played a smarter game, letting Jessica's delusions unravel Jake's facade. Back in the dorm, Jessica burst through the door, her blonde hair disheveled, her blue eyes red-rimmed. "Emily, what's your deal?" she snapped, tossing her purse onto her bunk. "Why are you chasing Jake? You're trying to ruin us." Her voice carried to their roommates Sarah and Mia, who glanced up from their phones, sensing drama. Emily's heart twinged, not from pain, but from the echo of her past self, who'd have screamed back. Instead, she smiled, pulling the Porsche's registration from her bag. "Jessica, whose name is on this?" she asked, her tone calm but sharp. The document, clearly listing Emily Harper, gleamed under the dorm's fluorescent light. Jessica's face paled, her fingers trembling as she grabbed the paper. "This is fake," she accused, her voice shrill. "You forged it to mess with us." Emily laughed, a cold, clear sound. "Call Jake, ask him whose car it is, or check the DMV records. I'm not the one lying." Jessica hesitated, her bravado crumbling. Sarah, a quiet biology major from Seattle, chimed in. "Jess, chill. Emily's not the type to fake documents. Mia, a blunt New Yorker studying econ, nodded. Yeah, Jake's been acting shady. Everyone's talking about his restaurant flop. Emily seized the moment, her voice loud enough for the open dorm door to carry it to the hall. Jessica, I've known Jake since high school. My dad funded him because his dad was an army buddy, not because he's some tech heir. He's got nothing. Jessica's eyes widened, doubt creeping in. She clutched her phone, dialing Jake, her voice trembling as she stepped outside. Emily sat back, her heart racing with satisfaction. The campus gossip mill was churning. She'd just poured fuel on it. Stanford's rumor network was relentless. By morning, whispers filled the quad. Jake Turner's broke. He pawned Harper's car. He's no heir. Emily overheard two classmates in the dining hall, their voices low. Heard he begged for cash at that fancy place, one said. Total fraud, the other replied. The social fallout was swift. Jake's frat brothers distanced themselves, his charm no longer enough. Emily felt a pang of guilt for Jessica, manipulated by Jake's lies, but it faded. Jessica had chosen her path just as Emily had in her past life, blinded by love. Alone in the dorm later, Emily pressed a hand to her chest, her heart's uneven rhythm a reminder of her fragility. Memories of Jake's past life taunts. You're nothing without me stung, but she pushed them down. She wasn't that girl anymore, cowering under his rage. Her rebirth had given her clarity and a chance to protect her parents and Harper Innovations. She thought of Laura, her mother, whose lawyer instincts had always seen through Jake. You sound different, Laura had said, sensing her shift. Emily was different, forged by pain into something more substantial. She opened her laptop, a coding project for her computer science class, grounding her in her future. Jake's desperation would grow, and Jessica's demands, fueled by Emily's subtle nudging, would push him further. She pictured Jessica back in the dorm crying after her call with Jake, his lies exposed. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Jake's getting roasted on group chat. You okay? Emily typed back. Never better, her lips curling. The dream voice's promise burned bright. She was rewriting her fate, and Jake's world was crumbling under the weight of his own deceit. Emily Harper sat at her desk in her Stanford University dorm, the Palo Alto night casting long shadows across the room. The air carried the faint scent of rain-soaked pavement and the dorm's ever-present mix of coffee and lavender body spray. Her laptop glowed with a half-finished coding project, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the dream voice that had reborn her at 19, rewrite your fate. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, beat with a steady resolve. Jake Turner's facade was cracking, his credit card cut off, her Porsche reclaimed, and now Jessica Miller's delusions were pushing him to the edge. Jessica had returned to the dorm earlier, her blonde hair tangled, her blue eyes puffy from crying, after learning Jake wasn't the heir to Harper Innovations, Emily's family's Silicon Valley tech empire. Emily had exposed his lie, with the Porsche's registration letting Stanford's gossip mill do the rest. Jessica, raised in a struggling Fresno household with a single mother who cleaned houses, clung to Jake as her ticket to wealth. Her ambition, born from years of scraping by, blinded her to his fraud. Emily understood her desperation. She had once fallen for Jake's charm, only to pay with her life in her past existence. Now Jessica's pregnancy was taking a toll. She hogged the dorm's bathroom, vomiting daily, leaving messes that irked their roommates, Sarah, a quiet biology major from Seattle, and Mia, a brash econ student from New York. Emily watched, her brown eyes sharp, as Jessica flaunted a cheap designer knockoff bag, claiming Jake had bought it. He's getting me more soon, Jessica boasted, her voice brittle. Emily smiled, leaning forward. That's cute, Jess. But a real heir would have gotten you something from Rodeo Drive, not a discount site. Her words were a needle pricking Jessica's pride. Jessica's face flushed, her nails digging into the bag. He's just busy, she snapped, but doubt flickered in her eyes. Emily pressed gently, her tone casual. Sure, but with his connections, he could rent that Chamalea Grove condo you keep talking about, right? Jessica nodded, her jaw tight, and stormed out to call Jake. Emily exchanged glances with Sarah and Mia, who rolled their eyes. She's obsessed, Mia muttered. Jake's no tech prince, Sarah added. Emily stayed silent, her heart twinging with memories of her past life. Jake's belt on her skin, his voice snarling, "You're nothing." Alone later, Emily pressed a hand to her chest, her heart's uneven rhythm a reminder of her fragility. She hadn't just lost her parents in her past life. She'd lost herself, eroded by Jake's abuse. Now reborn, she felt the weight of her second chance. She pictured her parents, Laura and David, safe in their Palo Alto home. Laura's words echoed, "You sound different, Em." Emily was different, forged by pain into a strategist. She wouldn't confront Jessica directly that had led to tragedy before. Instead, she'd let Jessica's greed unravel Jake's lies. The dorm's tension grew unbearable. Jessica's nausea and messiness sparked complaints from Sarah and Mia, who cornered Emily one evening. "She needs to go," Mia said, arms crossed. "This dorm's too small for her drama." Sarah nodded. "It's not just the mess. She's pregnant, and we're not equipped for that." Emily agreed, her mind racing. She tipped off the dorm supervisor, Ms. Carter, a no-nonsense woman, worried about liability. The next day, Ms. Carter confronted Jessica. "Move out in 3 days, or I report this to the dean," she warned, her voice firm. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, clutching her phone. Jessica ran to Jake, demanding he rent the Chamalaya Grove condo she thought he owned. Jake, drowning in debt from loans to maintain his facade, agreed to rent a unit at a steep price. Emily learned this from a text from Sarah. "Jess is moving out. Jake's renting some fancy place. Good riddance." Emily smiled, knowing Jake's loans were overdue. His calls from creditors relentless. The landlord, a friend of David Harper's, knew the truth. Harper Innovations had one daughter, no heir. Jessica's fantasy was about to crash. Stanford's campus buzzed with gossip. Jake's broke a classmate, whispered in the quad. "He's faking it," another said in the dining hall. His frat brothers shunned him, his charm fading as his lies surfaced. Emily overheard a group chat notification. "Turner's a fraud. Got caught pawning Harper's car." The social fallout was swift. Jake's reputation was in tatters. Emily felt a flicker of pity for Jessica, manipulated like she once was, but her resolve held. She thought of her future: computer science, Harper Innovations, a life free from Jake's shadow. The dream voice's promise burned. She was rewriting her fate, and Jessica's breaking point would seal Jake's doom. Emily Harper sat in her Stanford University dorm, the Palo Alto night, heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and pine from the campus quad outside. Her laptop glowed with a coding project, but her thoughts were elsewhere, tethered to the dream voice that had reborn her at 19, "Rewrite your fate." Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, thudded with a mix of anticipation and dread. Jake Turner's lies were unraveling. His credit card cut off her Porsche, reclaimed his reputation shattered by campus gossip. Jessica Miller, his pregnant girlfriend, was pushing him to the brink, her ambitions stoked by Emily's subtle nudging. The storm was breaking, and Emily was ready. Jessica's desperation had reached a fever pitch. Raised in a struggling Fresno household with a mother who cleaned houses to survive, she saw Jake as her escape to a life of luxury. Emily had exposed his fraud, revealing he wasn't the heir to Harper Innovations, her family's Silicon Valley tech empire. Jessica, now living with Jake in a rented Chamalaya Grove condo, faced mounting debts and a landlord who laughed at her claim that Jake was a tech prince. The dorm, freed of Jessica's chaos, was quieter, but Emily's roommates, Sarah, a biology major from Seattle, and Mia, an economics student from New York, whispered about the campus buzz. "Jake's done," Mia said. "Everyone knows he's broke." Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Jess flipped out in Jake's lecture hall today. Total mess." Emily's heart twinged, not from pain, but from the echo of her past life when Jake's abuse had left her broken. She'd manipulated Jessica's greed to expose him, but the violence she feared was unfolding. She called Uncle Mike, her family's driver, who'd been her eyes on Jessica since the dorm supervisor's ultimatum. "Keep her safe," Emily urged, her voice tight. "Jake's dangerous. In her past life, he'd killed her, his hands around her throat. She couldn't let that happen to Jessica." The confrontation came that afternoon. 6 months pregnant and fueled by betrayal, Jessica stormed into Jake's computer science lecture in Stanford's Gates Hall. Her voice echoed through the room, drawing gasps from students. "You liar!" she screamed, scratching Jake's face, her nails leaving red streaks. Textbooks flew as she tore his bag apart. Jake, his green eyes blazing, grabbed her hair and slapped her hard, the sound cracking like a whip. The elderly professor, Dr. Patel, shouted for security, pulling them apart. Jessica, sobbing, was escorted to the campus clinic, her cheeks swollen. Jake, his face bloodied, was detained by campus police. Emily learned the details later, snacking with Sarah and Mia in the dorm. "It was insane," Sarah said, her eyes wide. Jess went ballistic, and Jake just snapped. Mia shook her head. "He's done for. The dean's involved now." Emily nodded, her expression calm but her heart racing. She'd foreseen Jake's volatility, his ego unable to handle exposure. In her past life, his rage had turned on her, leaving bruises and silence. Now she felt a pang of guilt for Jessica, a pawn in Jake's game, but her resolve held. She'd saved her parents, Laura and David, and Harper Innovations was secure. Her rebirth demanded justice, not mercy. That night, the situation spiraled. Uncle Mike called, his voice panicked. "Miss Emily, something's wrong. Jessica's in the hospital." Enraged by the public humiliation, Jake followed Jessica to their condo. In a drunken fury, he attacked her, intent on silencing her accusations. Jessica, fighting for her life, grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed him, severing most of his genitals in a desperate act of self-defense. She collapsed, bleeding from her injuries, and Jake, wounded but alive, fled. Paramedics rushed Jessica to Stanford Medical Center, but her wounds were too severe. She died before dawn, her unborn child lost. Emily sat frozen, her phone trembling in her hand. Memories of her own death. Jake's hands, her blood pooling, flooded back. She pressed a hand to her chest, her heart stuttering. "Not my fault," she whispered, grounding herself. She tried to protect Jessica, sending Uncle Mike to watch her, but Jake's violence was unstoppable. The police classified it as involuntary manslaughter, with campus and local authorities swift to act. Jake was arrested, his reputation in tatters. Stanford's gossip mill exploded. Turner's a monster, he killed her. His frat brothers cut ties, and the dean suspended him pending trial. Emily stared out her dorm window, the red-tiled roofs of Stanford glowing under the moon. Her parents were alive, and her future at Harper Innovations was intact. But Jessica's death weighed on her, a reminder of her past life's failures. She thought of Laura's words. "You sound different, Em." She was different, forged by pain into a strategist who'd outmaneuvered Jake. The dream voice's promise burned. She was rewriting her fate, and Jake's reckoning was here. The campus would never forget his fall, and Emily would ensure he paid for every sin. Emily Harper stood outside the Santa Clara County Jail, the Palo Alto sun, casting stark shadows across the concrete walls. The air carried the faint tang of exhaust from nearby Highway 101, a reminder of the world moving on, while Jake Turner's was collapsing. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, beat with a steady resolve tempered by the dream voice that had reborn her at 19, "Rewrite your fate." Jessica Miller's death, stabbed by Jake in a violent rage, had shaken Emily, but it also sealed his downfall. Now he was behind bars, charged with involuntary manslaughter, and he'd demanded to see her. She was ready to face the monster who'd destroyed her past life. The jail's fluorescent lights buzzed inside, casting a harsh glow on the glass partition separating her from Jake. He sat in an orange jumpsuit, his sharp features gaunt, his green eyes hollow. The scratches from Jessica's nails still marred his face, a testament to their fatal clash. Emily's mind flashed to her past life. Jake's fists, her parents' graves, her own blood pooling as he snarled, "You don't deserve me." She'd been reborn to undo that pain, to protect her parents, Laura and David Harper, and their tech empire, Harper Innovations. Jessica's death was a tragedy, but Emily had tried to save her, sending Uncle Mike to watch over her. Jake's violence was his alone. Emily picked up the phone, her brown eyes locking onto Jake's. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice cold as the metal chair beneath her. Jake leaned forward, his knuckles white around his phone. "Why, Emily?" he rasped. "Why'd you save Jessica? She should have died in that clinic, not like this. We could have been together. You love me." His words echoed his past life lies when he'd begged for forgiveness after Jessica's botched abortion, only to kill Emily later. Her heart twinged, not from love, but from the weight of her survival. She'd been that naive girl once blinded by his charm, not anymore. She laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that made Jake flinch. "Love you, Jake? You're dreaming. I saved Jessica to make you suffer. You thought you could play the heir, steal my family's legacy, and walk away. I wanted you to rot." Her words cut deep, her voice steady despite the memories flooding back his belt on her skin, her silenced screams. Jake's eyes widened, shock mixing with rage. "You're a monster," he spat. Emily leaned closer to the glass, her smile cold. "Look in the mirror, Jake. You're the one in chains." The guard signaled time was up, but Emily's gaze held Jake's unyielding. She'd rewritten her fate just as the dream voice promised. Her parents were alive, and Harper Innovations was secure. But Jessica's death weighed on her, a reminder of her past life's failures. She tried to protect her, but Jake's darkness was unstoppable. As she left the jail, the sun warmed her face, and she exhaled, a knot loosening in her chest. She wasn't the broken girl from her past life. She was Emily Harper, forged by pain into a force of justice. Stanford's campus had erupted in the aftermath. The dean expelled Jake before his trial, citing the university's zero-tolerance policy for violence. Gossip spread like wildfire. Turner killed his girlfriend. He was never rich. His frat brothers shunned him, his name a cautionary tale in dining halls and group chats. Emily overheard a classmate in the quad. He fooled everyone but Emily, called it. The social fallout was complete. Jake's charm was buried under his crimes. The legal consequences were swift: 8 years for manslaughter with no bail due to his flight risk after fleeing the condo. In her dorm, Emily packed for a weekend at her parents' Palo Alto home. She needed their warmth, their voices after facing Jake. In her past life, she'd lost them to a crash rushing to her side. Now she'd vowed to protect them. Over dinner, Laura, her lawyer mother, studied her. "You're different, Em. Stronger." Emily smiled, her heart steady. "I've learned a few things, Mom." David, her dad, grinned. "You're ready for Harper Innovations. Intern with us this summer, then take the reins after graduation." Emily nodded, her future clear: computer science leadership, a life free from Jake's shadow. She returned to campus, her dorm quiet without Jessica's chaos. Sarah and Mia, her roommates, greeted her with coffee. "You okay after all this?" Sarah asked, her Seattle softness showing. Mia, blunt as ever, added, "Jake's done. Campus hates him." Emily sipped her coffee, her lips curling. Good. The dream voice's promise had guided her through pain, guilt, and triumph. She'd saved her family, exposed Jake, and secured her future. As Stanford's red-tiled roofs glowed under the sunset, Emily felt the weight of her past life lift, her heart beating strong for what lay ahead. Emily Harper stood on the Stanford University quad, the California sun warming her face as graduates in black caps and gowns swirled around her. It was May 2027, her graduation day, and the Palo Alto air carried the scent of blooming jasmine and fresh-cut grass. Her heart, fragile from its congenital condition, beat steadily, a quiet triumph after 2 years of rewriting her fate. The dream voice that had reborn her at 19, "Rewrite your fate," echoed faintly, its promise fulfilled. Jake Turner, the man who'd destroyed her past life, was gone, his life ended in prison. Emily was free, and her future was bright with possibilities. 2 years ago, she'd faced Jake in the Santa Clara County Jail, his orange jumpsuit starkly contrasting to the charming facade he'd once worn. His manslaughter conviction for Jessica Miller's death had sealed his fate: 8 years for the violent attack that killed her and their unborn child. Emily had confronted him, her words sharp. "I saved Jessica to make you suffer." His shock, his rage had been her victory. But the cost lingered: Jessica's death, a tragedy Emily had tried to prevent by sending Uncle Mike to watch her wait on her. In her past life, Jake's abuse had broken her, stealing her parents, Laura and David Harper, and their tech empire, Harper Innovations. This time she'd protected them, exposing Jake's lies with surgical precision. The campus had never forgotten. Stanford's gossip mill had churned after Jessica's death. Turner was a fraud. He killed his girlfriend. His expulsion had been swift, the dean citing zero tolerance for violence. Frat brothers shunned him, classmates mocked his heir act, and group chats buzzed with his downfall. The legal consequences were unrelenting. Jake's trial had been a media circus, his family's bankruptcy exposed his charm useless. Emily had watched from the sidelines, her role in his ruin known only to her. She'd reclaimed her Porsche, cut his funding, and let Jessica's greed unravel his lies, all guided by the dream voice's mandate. Now on the quad, Emily adjusted her graduation cap, her dark hair spilling over her gown. Her parents stood nearby, Laura's lawyer eyes scanning the crowd, David's proud smile warming her. In her past life, they'd died in a crash, rushing to her side after Jake's betrayal. Now they were here alive, their love a shield. Over dinner last night, David had repeated his offer: "Join Harper Innovations, M. You're ready to lead." Laura had nodded, her voice soft. "You're stronger now, different." Emily had smiled, her heart full. "I've learned a lot, Mom." Her computer science degree was a stepping stone to running their tech empire, and her future was clear. Her phone buzzed as she posed for photos with her roommates Sarah and Mia. It was Uncle Mike, her family's driver, his voice heavy. "Miss Emily, Jake Turner's dead. He couldn't take the prison bullying, smashed his head into a wall yesterday." Emily froze, the quad's chatter fading. She pictured Jake's gaunt face in jail, his desperate plea, "You love me." She'd laughed then, but now a weight lifted. She hadn't wanted his death, only his suffering, yet the news felt like freedom. Thanks, Mike, she said, her voice steady. She slipped her phone away, her heart's rhythm despite the news. Sarah, the quiet biology major from Seattle, noticed her pause. You okay, Em? She asked, her voice gentle. Mia, the brash New Yorker studying econ, chimed in. Bet it's about Jake. Campus is buzzing again. Emily nodded, her lips curling into a genuine smile, the first in years that felt unburdened. I'm fine, just closing a chapter. In her past life, Jake's lies had cost her everything. Her voice burned by his forced pills, her dignity eroded by his fists, her life ended by his rage. Now she stood tall, her parents safe, her future hers to shape. The ceremony began, names echoing across the quad. Emily walked the stage, her diploma a symbol of her rebirth. She thought of Jessica, whose Fresno dreams of wealth had led to her doom. Emily had tried to save her, but Jake's violence was a force of its own. The guilt lingered, a faint scar, but it didn't define her. She was Emily Harper, daughter of innovators, forged by pain into a woman who'd outsmarted her monster. Once a stage for Jake's lies, the campus celebrated her triumph. Classmates whispered her name respectfully. She called him out from the start. As the sun set, casting Stanford's red-tiled roofs in a golden glow, Emily joined her parents for photos. Laura squeezed her hand. We're proud, Em. You've grown so much. David winked. Ready to take on the tech world? Emily laughed, her heart light more than ready. The dream voice had guided her through pain, guilt, and vengeance to this moment. Jake's shadow was gone, his death a final note in her justice. She'd saved her family, secured Harper Innovations, and managed her heart condition with care. Standing under the California sky, Emily smiled, truly free, her new dawn.